dear. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Northland Artist Conversation. My name is Mark Kelly. I am your host for the show, still your host. Thank you very much for sticking around, checking us out. Really appreciate it. Great times, man. Very, very cool. It's been interesting. We're well past our year mark now, which is great. This will come out in August at some point. Happy days. Days are getting a bit longer. Yes, very, very cool. Getting a little bit more sun. The weekends are starting to show a bit of sunshine every now and then. Man, I tell you, I'm loving that. It's very, very cool at the moment. I'm going to flick to my camera. Today's guest is Now, we were talking before, and she said that she doesn't consider herself to be a multidisciplinary artist. So sometimes I would say multidisciplinary artist, but I'm not going to. She said she identifies as just an artist. There we go. So, on today's podcast, we have an artist by the name of Sonja van Kerkhoff. I've got to make sure I said that right. I think I was pretty good. She is a lovely lady, originally born in New Zealand, spent some time in Netherlands, 3 decades. It's a little bit more than just some time. Before moving back to the beautiful Northland area. Wicked. Man, I tell you what, this was a slightly longer than normal podcast, and I'm really glad it was, because stick around, watch or listen to the whole thing, because she shares some amazing stories, and producer Andrew, I think it'd be fair to say the story she shares at the end is the coolest, but also the craziest as well. So, how about I do this? I'm going to shut up, so that way you guys can start listening. Let's sit down and have a conversation with Sonja van Kerkhoff. Really bad joke, by the way, for those of you that are just watching and joining. I'll explain. You know what? Sonja van Kerkhoff, thank you very much for joining us. Did I say it correctly? After having just done it. Close.
Tēnā koe Mark. E pai ana. It's all good.
Thank you so much. So, before we started, I made a David Hasselhoff joke, because Hoff is your last name and Hoff is his last name, the last part of his name. But yes, thank you very much for coming in and being with us today. Now, for the people that are listening, because we are also on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, this is going to be quite interesting, because
there's a whole lot of junk lying all over the floor.
It's not junk.
Props.
It's not junk.
Props.
Props is a great word. Like, there's lots of interesting things. Like, we've got posters and books, and we've got some art, and we've got numbers, and we've got a piece of art and a couple of books, and it's all we're normally not this,
and a stuffed possum,
and a stuffed possum wearing a
half an eggshell.
It's half an eggshell with a feather on it,
a kiwi feather,
and
no
he's
less.
hanging on to a pool noodle.
Very bright red pool noodle.
Pink. So I think this podcast will be unique.
Aren't they all?
They certainly are. I think this one might be a little bit more out of the box than normal.
We'll see.
And we'll see how it goes. So, we were talking inside before, and you'd said to me, let's not talk too much about my past.
Personal history.
Your personal history. So, I mean, we've all got a history. Some people have good and some people have bad.
I can summarise it in one sentence and then we get it out of the way.
Okay.
Born in Taranaki, raised on a dairy farm, born in 1960.
Right.
So you can work out how old I am. Eldest of 9, big Catholic family.
Right.
A very redneck area that I grew up in. My father did not really want me to go to school, and I had to negotiate to be able to do school C, and I tricked him by pretending, I wasn't pretending, I did do typing, but I did in the lunch hour, and passed. But we did a deal. He felt that I shouldn't waste instead of working on the farm, he wanted me to work on the farm. It was all about control. I did a deal that if I could sit school C, and if I failed, because he was sure I would fail, then I could just leave school and work on the farm as he wished, instead of just doing it in the mornings and evenings.
Yep. Okay.
Enough of anyway, unfortunately I passed, and he was furious, so I found a job, lived elsewhere, and so on. It's enough. That's enough.
That's what's up to you.
Oh, no, okay. And then the first job was in the Patea Freezing Works. It's a big freezing...
Now, that's the Patea Māori Club, right?
Yes, same place.
Yeah,
Before
Poyer.
In the late 78.
Yeah.
But yes, with all the Poyer fathers and mothers, I was working with them probably.
Yeah.
And when I was working there, the sort of background I had no idea there was such a thing as university or art school or anything like that.
Okay,
I had I was that naive, or who knows. The careers advisor thought I should be a panel beater because I was left-handed. So that's the extent of the thinking there. Anyway, after 6 months at the freezing works, which I did not like, and the culture was not foreign to me because I was also working class. I came from the background of all the people I worked with.
Yeah, that's sort of that hard slog, right?
It was very hard, but I also made fun. So I had been warned when they hired me at the Patea Freezing Works, I was a woman, that the one before had left in tears. It was a man and they were a bit worried about hiring me, but they thought they'd give me a shot. So I was prepared that they would be throwing meat at me. So, because I was working in the laboratory, so, it was a way of responding to the situation. So I had a routine worked out before I went in on my first day. I pretended I was Queen Elizabeth II. I just did this whole psych thing, and I put up the hand and I did the royal wave, and I did it extremely slowly, and I looked at everyone and I gave them the biggest smile I could do it, and it worked. And not one single piece of meat was thrown at me. Anyway, and I'll stop there. That's enough of a story. After about 6 months, I decided to go nursing, not because I disliked it, but I always saw it as I only took the job because I needed money and I needed to do stuff. Yep. And I didn't know I could do more. And then when I was nursing, I discovered that there was such a thing as art school and that it might be possible. So then I enrolled at the boys' high school during the day, did bursary art, and at night I worked as a nurse. And so now, a year later, 1980, I hitchhiked down to Dunedin. I had no idea where. I've never been out of the North Island, so I had no idea.
Okay.
I was 19, and I started art school, and it was like eating ice cream every day. It was wonderful, amazing. And again, things happened. The first place I lived in had no walls. It was Dunedin. It was a bit cold. But again, I adapted and did things. I'm not going to go into that. Anyway.
Wow.
Pretty lucky. But in my second year of art school, something went like a switch in me, and then I thought, I am going to be an artist. I am an artist. Might not have articulated it like that, not as assertively anyway, but I just did things in my life to make it possible.
Yeah, right.
And I'm lucky because I have 2 arms and 2 legs.
And both function.
Yes, right.
Well.
Reasonably well, yes, yeah.
As we get older, not as much as they were in the 20s.
So that kind of answers your question, which would be, when did I get into creativity? Well, it's always been there, because for me, creativity is about problem solving. And I would argue that being creative, it's not really about the medium you're working with, but it's how you use the medium. So if someone is a housekeeper, for example, and the way they keep their house is creative, I would say
that. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we started this when producer Andrew and I first. When I said to Andrew, look, I'd like to start a podcast. This is what I was thinking about. I remember throwing out the usual suspects: actors, musicians, painters, writers, and he was like, "Well, what about graffiti artists and hip hop guys and tattooists?" And I was like, "Yeah. What about people that are creative with food? What about hairdressers?" Absolutely. If it's a creative expression
approach, we
would love to have you in.
Yes.
And that's kind of how we've always run it. I mean, man, we've had international actors, we've had international musicians, we've had graffiti artists that now embrace Buddhism. We've had just a wide range, and we're very, very proud of that. It's, we've had so many different diverse people and types, and because art has no art doesn't see gender, race, sex, bias, or anything like that. So we embrace that.
I agree, although you have to admit, partly I'm talking about culture in Aotearoa.
Yeah, sure.
Because often art is seen as not useful or so functional, or if you come from a poorer background, it's harder to be an artist.
Economically viable.
Because, but it's not really so much to do with money, it's more to do with social attitudes. How do I explain? My siblings don't understand what I do, but it doesn't matter. I'm very confident about what I do, so it doesn't even matter.
No.
But to someone who is younger, or it possibly is harder. I'm just really, really lucky that it wasn't hard for me really to go to art school. I worked a couple of years, and one could argue that working in the freezing works is hard, but it isn't. Not if you come from of rough back. My background was fairly rough, which kind of explains why my father didn't want me to stay at school. He wasn't out of the box in that culture.
Right, yeah.
And so I did come out of an environment. And I'm so fortunate, because when I went to art school, I discovered I was unusual. Everyone else came from a middle-class background. Yeah. No one else had to have 2 jobs or juggle money or manage their affairs. But I was already been doing that for a few years, so for me it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And it gave me agency, it gave me power, even though I might not have felt that at the time, because I'm only 19 or 20.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had it because it was do or die. No one's going to pick up something after me. I have to do it. And so because I didn't have those choices, it saved me a lot of energy.
Oh yeah.
And
definitely.
some of my art friends, I have a few friends from those days still, and they say, Sonja, you just powered through. For example, the woodwork tutor refused to teach the girls woodwork because refused to teach me. I'm not sure if it was all the females in the class.
Yeah.
Because he said, okay, hold up the wood and put it in the grain. I didn't know what the grain was. I had no idea. And I asked in the class, I said, what's the grain? And he said, if you don't know what the grain is, go out the door. And that was it.
Alrighty.
And
wow.
I thought, well, if my father can't stop me from getting school C, a woodwork teacher is not going to stop me from learning how to work with wood.
Oh, definitely not.
So, I have half built 2 boats in my back. That's another story. I won't go there. But the thing is, I'm quite good at working with wood now.
Yeah.
And I can weld and do other things. I think as an artist these days, it's very handy to have a lot of skills because it gives you choices.
Yes.
But also, 1, it gives you choices, but 2, it also teaches discipline and approach, because sometimes a material, like if you're welding, you have to know certain rules or you're going to hurt yourself or others.
Yep.
I've also made public sculpture, so I've got a sculpture that will outlive me in Holland at the moment, and it's a 2 metre by 2 metre big welded thing. I did not weld it myself. I welded a model for it because it had to be safe for the public.
Right.
And it's called Ngahau Efa, the Four Winds.
Oh, wow.
And it's based on the hammerhead core whaiwhai design, which has a very nice story, a proverb, a whakatauki that goes with it, which is why I chose it for this piece.
Yeah.
So often a lot of sculpture is about looking at it. I wanted a sculpture you look right through it. So it's all these lines, and they are all curved and go in different directions.
Yeah.
And as you walk around the work, it's like you're walking around a three-dimensional drawing that changes.
Okay.
Because all the lines go through each other, and you can climb it and play on it, have a picnic on it if you dare, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop there. I got a bit sidetracked. Okay.
No, that's fine.
We're fine.
But everything's fine.
So
you just talk. I'll sit here and just be amazed. Our audience will just be amazed. It's like...
But I'm so lucky that I can do that. So when I first got that commission, I'd never done a big public sculpture before. And I thought, what do I do? I'll ask one of my friends who does big public sculptures, a friend in the south of France. So I emailed him. I said, what do I do? He says, you just make a model out of paper and then you make it out of metal. Because you work it all out on paper, make a mess, and then you do it. And I did. And
Okay.
then I just presented it. And by the time I got to the metal design of this piece, I had found someone who was he was my old welding tutor
right. Yeah,
at the art school in Maastricht in the southern part of the Netherlands, and he was very keen to work with me.
Yeah, nice.
Because for him, he's now part of a sculpture.
Yeah.
Because it also works as a real compass. So we've got 4 directions, which also match the 4 directions.
North, south, east, west.
So people could even use it as a compass.
Wow.
So I like that it's got all these different layers that work with it.
Works in multiple levels.
So now I should talk about how I ended up in the Netherlands, because I had gone to Dunedin to study art.
Yes.
I then discovered I am half Dutch. I have this very Dutch name. My father immigrated from the Netherlands after the war. I had no idea, but in the Netherlands, until I moved there, after World War II, people starved. It was a very poor country. It was decimated. I had no idea the level of poverty.
Yeah.
And my father's family are farmers from the east side, and so they were all very poor, and he was the youngest of 9 and wanted to be a farmer. His only hope to be a farmer was to immigrate, and Canada, Australia and New Zealand at the time offered free entrance and jobs. And the Dutch, being very pragmatic, paid to get rid of a whole generation of youth that went all over the world, which is crazy.
Paid to get rid of
They
youth.
were paid to
Wow.
leave, and that law was in place until about, let's say, 20 years ago, and then they've changed it. But it's
Wow,
such a
2000s.
nutty
Oh my God.
I'm not sure exactly when they changed it, because I
Yeah.
had a friend who used it in the Netherlands, and he used that law to come to New Zealand.
Wow.
But the rule is you're not allowed to go back, or you have to pay the money back. But it's an export rule. Very weird.
Look, I mean, New Zealand export. What, Producer Andrew, we export what? Like meat, produce. I've never heard of humans being exported,
Well,
but I mean, sure, why not?
Well, the Dutch are entrepreneurs. They're very good at. The Dutch are very, very good at business. Yeah.
Yes.
Small country in between large countries, very good at negotiating and so on.
Yeah, here's some cash, bugger off.
Yes, exactly. So he came.
He came.
And what was interesting about him is, see, a lot of people who travel, they're a bit adventurous, but he wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
And what I learned about this, and once I realised how he came here, I then understood. He was always very proud of the fact that he never had a lesson in English, and you could tell.
Right. Proud of that.
Very proud.
Okay.
No, but it just says something about the background. So what was interesting is when I first went to the Netherlands, I stayed with my uncles.
Okay.
They didn't speak a word of English. And so I used German. I had studied German. So fortunately, I used German as a way of communicating for the first few years until I learnt Dutch.
Nice.
And the art school I chose was in the very southern part of the Netherlands. It was a bit random why I chose this, just like I chose Dunedin and I didn't choose Elam or Ilam. To backtrack slightly, there is a nice story about that.
Yes.
So during the summer breaks at art school, you have to work, okay?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so one summer I had a job as a mural painter for the Government Brewster in New Plymouth, Namutu.
Oh, yes.
And in those days, Dick Bett was the director. He was a very good director, actually. However, when we started, it was me from Dunedin. There was another student from Elan and one from Ilam. They were allowed to start designing their own murals immediately.
Okay.
I was not. I had a very strict assignment. It was fine, actually, because sometimes when you get something very rigid and strict, it forces you to think, okay, I'm
outside of the box.
I'm going to solve this, and I did.
Yep.
And then at one point, Dick Bett asked the three of us, because we had meetings together, how do you change the tone of a colour without the intensity of a colour without actually changing the colour? And I knew the recipe for that.
Okay.
And so I blurted it out. And then he looked at me and he asked the other two, is that right? And they said they had no idea. And then he said, okay, you can design your own murals now. So that was
right.
that.
Wow.
So it was very funny. But, I mean, in some ways, it's also why I've been able to do stuff, I think. Because, I mean, sometimes I get down, of course, everyone does. But to try and think, okay, you know, I could have got really upset because he let the two guys design murals and not me.
Right, initially, yeah.
And I think it was, I'm not sure if it's because I was a female or because I came from Dunedin. It could have been either, and it doesn't matter.
How long ago are we talking? In the 80s?
We're talking about 81, 82.
Okay, so I would say it would probably be a huge part of sexism.
I would say so
back
too.
then,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. But it turned on itself, and in the end, he was great, you know.
Yeah.
And I have quite a lot of respect for him. I mean, he was a good director, very broad-minded, etc. So back to Holland. So I enrolled at the art school in Maastricht, which is in the southern part of the Netherlands.
Okay.
And it was quite hard work in a way because I was the first student they'd ever had who wasn't German or Dutch speaking. I mean, I did speak German, but
not conversational German,
well, no,
right?
it was conversational, but it's hard when you're fighting tutors who are sexist. I won't say what type of sexist they were, but they were. I had 7 male tutors, and after about 6 months of this, I just said, where are the female tutors? You can't tell me there are no female artists, because I was really just getting sick of all of this. Yeah. And the other interesting thing was, you know, they assumed I was 29, and most of the other students were 24, 25, and And I had made the mistake of having children.
How the hell is that a mistake?
Oh dear! And so I lost my studio after 3 days, and I had to keep fighting and fighting to get my studio because they just assumed because I had a baby I'd be stopping. I have a husband. His job is to look after the kids.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
No, it's all right. It was good.
You take turns. You make it work.
Exactly. And you just decide how you do it.
Yep.
Anyway, it was very interesting because sometimes when you have adversity, then other things pop up. Mm-hmm. And you learn things and you do. And one of the things that happened to me is I started to diversify in what I was doing. So I did printmaking as my first degree, my first major.
Yeah.
Liked it because of all the technical stuff and so on. And now at art school I was in the painting. Technically I was in what's called monumental, which means more or less painting.
Okay.
And what happened was I kept thinking, I can't paint on canvas, as expected, because it's just too male dominated, because I was facing all the sexism that I saw around me.
Yep.
So at one point one of the teachers yelled at me that we're now talking about 1990, 91, 92, yelled at me, you got to make a big painting to make a statement. So I made a huge canvas. I welded a structure for it so it would stand on its own feet.
Yeah.
Because I was so annoyed about this idea of being an independent artist. And then I tarred it, and then I cut a text out of it, that extreme egoism bred by total self-involvement. And I carved it all out, and then I displayed it, and then I tarred it all. It stunk like anything, and it had its own little feet, so it was independent. And what happened was it went beyond the heads of my department. They didn't get it, but someone in the sculpture department saw it, and they said, "You're in the wrong department. This is a conceptual work.
Wow.
You come over here."
Yeah.
So I couldn't, because it would have cost too much. So I had secret meetings, secret rendezvous in the sculpture department. Anyway, to cut the story short, I ended up graduating in a double major in sculpture and in that. And then while I was shifting into sculpture, I started playing around with video and performance art.
Yep. Very cool.
So you earlier were talking about how you have one medium, and I'm thinking, well, in a way, when something's easy, you stick with it. But sometimes if you face a sort of barrier, and I was facing a sort of cultural barrier for me, it was forcing me to start looking at making art in different ways. So for my graduation project, I cast little egg cups. They looked just like an egg cup, but they could have been a trophy, and they were see-through, and I made about 100 of these things. by then I knew all the departments in the art school, so I was in the jewellery department a lot, and that's actually where I made I made them on a lathe, I made the original on the lathe, cast it, and then and so on. And on it each had the text, "Savour the experience." And then for my graduation project, I went around the city, different venues, because by this time I also was working as a translator, because my Dutch was quite good now.
Okay, yep.
And I was doing translation work, and that was another way to make by. But also brought me into other worlds, because my English is native and okay, and I could translate quite well, and it brought people. So I met the mayor, and I met different people.
Yep.
Anyway, so for my graduation project, I walked around the street with this little tray of translucent, and I would offer them as art. I said, "This is art."
Wow.
And people would want to buy them because you buy art. And I say, well, and the price of each work was a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
People had to go through a negotiation with me, and actually the price was how I judged their sincerity. So if they were making fun of me, and they offered a certain amount, I wouldn't accept it.
Yeah.
But if they were genuine and that the conversation worked, then they got the piece.
Well, as someone who's been in sales for 3 decades now, negotiation is also an art form.
It is.
So
Absolutely.
essentially it's art on art.
Yes, it is. It is. It exactly is. And also because often this idea of art as a commodity, an object, this blue thing here, or these books, or the props lying around on the ground.
Yeah.
You say, that's an artwork, but actually we think it's an artwork because I'm an artist and I say it is. But that's really the only definition not the only, I take that back. As a viewer or a perceiver, you also can decide that lamp over there is an artwork.
Yeah.
And it's just the way you read it. And if you can articulate yourself, if you write about it or make a movie about it, it becomes an art object. So the art object itself is very ephemeral. It's how we look at it and read it, which is the whole world of aesthetics, because aesthetics is really about, technically you say that's the art of beauty, but it's really about the art of feeding the senses, the eyes and the ears and the whatever.
Yeah.
And of course conceptual art has a place there because we're feeding the mind.
Yep.
And I guess for me an ideal artwork is an artwork that feeds in several levels. Mm-hmm. Both intellectually and intuitively or emotionally, or it tells a story I hadn't heard of before, or it brings up an issue that was latent. Yeah.
Northland Artists Conversation are incredibly proud to support the Quarry Arts Centre. Quarry Arts Centre, amazing place, located on Selwyn Ave in Whangarei. Such a wonderfully beautiful venue. They are an art gallery and they have some amazing exhibitions, and they also hold Te Kōwhai Print Trust as well. Another really, really cool artistic endeavour that's done as well. They will have different exhibitions and shows of all different types of medium available as well, and they're such a long-standing venue in the community as well. Highly recommend you checking them out. Fantastic place. Really, really cool to take the kids and family as well. So, Northland Arts Conversation, proud to support the Quarry Arts Centre. So, as a woman who lived in the Netherlands for 3 decades,
yes,
and having to be constantly battling sexism, essentially. Now, I'm just going to quickly insert something in here. There's a great line from a James Bond film of the new series with Daniel Craig. It was the Casino Royale, the first one, where Dame Judi Dench says to James Bond, "You're a sexist, misogynistic relic of the past." And when you're telling me these things at this male-dominated area that you were in, that was the first quote that popped into my head. I was like, damn straight.
That's right.
Absolutely. So how did you, as someone who didn't want to be stuck in those confines, how did you make sure that you were able to break out?
Well, one of the things is I used to fake it. I used to pretend I didn't have children. But I'm lucky because I have a wonderful partner who I didn't have to give a list of instructions to, because he basically helped feed the babies from birth.
Right, okay.
Okay, so tip for new mums, the male does a night shift. And you store the milk in the fridge, and the male does a night shift. The baby attaches to both of you.
Yeah.
And
it does.
And you get a good night's sleep.
See, I'm glad you said partner, because my genuine concern was that they would have been paid money to leave the country. No, I'm kidding.
I imported my partner from Aotearoa. Okay, good Kiwi guy.
Does that mean he got... because you bought him in, did you have to pay an import tax?
It was a hard I'm going to answer that seriously.
Okay, cool.
For 18 months, he was in limbo because we didn't fit any of the categories. But the Fremdeling Politie, I'm not really... how do you say that in English? The police that are to do with people coming into a country.
Immigration.
Immigration.
There we go.
There we are. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. They were very kind to us, and they saw that it was... because I was a full-time student and I got a bursary. If I stopped studying, I'd lose the bursary. There's a whole complication about why.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I didn't want to lose that, and it was an opportunity to have enough money. It wasn't great. We were very poor, lot less than unemployment money or whatever. But because I was a full-time student, if I had been a worker, they'd have come in and brought in a husband. Because technically I was Dutch, so I was counted as a Dutch person.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you have dual citizenship?
I have dual citizenship.
Okay, right.
My father's Dutch, and through luck I was allowed to get the citizenship.
That's cool. Okay.
And then it took 18 months before my husband was allowed to officially live in the country. But so we always have to keep going there, tell the story, and then at the end they found a creative solution. I promised to look for work, which I was happy to do, and they agreed to let me enroll unemployed for 2 months or 3 months. I can't remember now but it was a very creative solution from it. And then he was allowed to register, and then he was allowed to look for work. By then, both of us could speak Dutch quite well, so we were actually getting freelance work as translators. So,
that's good.
So, that was okay. But it was interesting because I used to look for food on the street. We were pretty poor, but then you meet a whole other group of people and who are doing the same. And very subtly, everyone knows, and we had to move a lot, and people are nice, I did things for us because they knew that, something full of holes we're not going to turn our noses up at that gift.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's a good thing if you are frugal and live frugal, and we weren't really embarrassed by it because we had confidence. I'll give a nice story. I'm going to switch a bit. Ans Wester is a friend of mine. And she's passed now. Yeah. She invited me to go to the East Coast to film for her.
Okay.
And nice story. She lent us her car, and so we were sleeping in the car. All fine, because we're used to anywhere.
Yep.
And I'm very lucky that my partner is also very flexible about this sort of thing and was very willing to go. And for us, it was an opportunity to be thrown into a very Māori environment. And it was incredible. So because we were sleeping in the car, someone offered us somewhere to stay.
Yep.
And that led to other connections and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Others involved in the group were a bit annoyed about this because they didn't know why they weren't offered it. But it was because we were sleeping in a car. The house we were offered had no shower. So what?
Oh, wow.
Well, if you're sleeping in a car, you're not going to care.
No.
Not at all. Anyway, I'll stop there because I'm a bit of a sidetrack. Back to the Netherlands and diversifying.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to now proceed to do a bit of performance art out of the box.
Here we go. So,
because what's great about performance art is you break boundaries. Like normally with theatre you have a stage, people sit in seats and they
Yes,
clap.
they do.
There's a beginning and end often.
Mm-hmm.
But the lovely thing about the world of performance art is you never know who is the spectator and who is the participant.
Absolutely.
And because also the boundaries are not so clear cut. I mean, this painting is easy because that's the border and this is the wall.
It's defined, right?
It's defined, that's right. And so now we're going to proceed with a live performance.
Now this will be interesting.
So I'm going to try and keep the mic fist away from my mouth, and I'm bending down and I'm picking up.
That's all right.
Now, what's interesting about this jug is I actually made it when I was at art school in Dunedin.
Oh, pottery.
So
Very
one
nice.
of the fantastic things about the art school in Dunedin and why I chose that was because you spent 2 years learning lots of skills.
Okay.
So jug.
Now the jug's filled with rocks.
Fill.
It's filled with. I'm sorry. It's filled with what?
Fill. Well, I call it fill. Rocks. Clay.
Oh, like different bits and pieces, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm now pouring this fill into a bowl.
We are, yes.
Yes.
Cool.
This is 1 kilo. I have to get them all out.
There's one kilo.
And it creates a little bit of dust.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll vacuum later, everyone. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so here we go.
Now I'm passing Mark a
Yes.
piece of paper.
I have a bit of card. Now, it says to me 0.00025%. What does that relate to? Okay, here we go. Of the fill. Oh, hello. Dumped on the back of propolis by the neighbour.
The end.
Okay, so there's no... okay. Right, so here we go.
Now you're going to ask me what this is about.
First of all, I'm going to do this. 0.00025%. Shivers. Of the fill. So it's this. Has been dumped by the neighbour. Full stop. Thank you very much. Now, I'll hand those back to you. What does this all mean? Is this subjective? Is it open for interpretation? Or is there actually a genuine meaning behind it?
So what's been very interesting is in October last year we had a new neighbour in our little sleepy street of Kawakawa.
I love Kawakawa.
It's a wonderful town.
Beautiful.
I love it. So this neighbour came in. Yes,
yep.
Neighbour moved in.
Mm-hmm.
We were still in the Netherlands. We came back after he had already dumped, I don't know how much fill. These numbers are what are on our land. So there used to be a gully and there used to be a forest and trees all around a dilapidated house, and then the forest, the ngahere of Punga, came right through to our place. We didn't have a very clear boundary line between the two properties, but it was clear what it was.
Okay, right.
And he had markers put in, and that was all good. We came back, and he had already filled the gully in, and said...
With what?
Fill.
Fill?
Yeah, but it was wetter than that.
Okay.
It's dried. That's dried out a bit. This has already been in the shutter room. I'll get to that in a second.
Cool.
So it's actually fill that's already... This is third use. First use was neighbour dumps fill.
Right.
We are green as anything. We had no idea what is the law in New Zealand. Like, can a neighbour dump all this stuff on your land and tell you that they're improving your property? Every time he kept saying, the trees, they did nothing. There was aruru. This owl used to live in one of the trees that was chopped down by the neighbour.
Okay.
The kōtare, which is the kingfisher, used to fish in a settlement pond, which is now full of fill.
Wow.
The shag and the kereru, which is a bit fat, I've got chalk lines there, so I'm going to make him a little skinnier.
No,
but
these are normally quite fat.
Yeah, but this one I got a bit, so this is why I'm going to still repaint it. Okay. So the painting is also a sort of memoriam, at least for the 4 birds that used to live on our property, or used to visit, should say. because birds are ephemeral beings, and they're worse than cats. They hover everywhere.
They do.
So we could never say we own them or anything. But
No.
the thing is, they used to visit, and they made their homes there, but now those trees are gone, because he not only put fill in, he knocked out some of our trees as well. Now, we did ring the compliance department of the Far North District Council, and since then have learnt a lot. And what we learned is it took less than 5 working days for him to be given an earthworks permit, which did not have our permission on it.
Oh,
and
wow.
and they were breaking their own law by doing this. I can repeat this, but I'm sure you can wind back in the podcast and hear it again. I have been fighting this since November.
Okay, wow.
And we feel very strong about this. So, I mean, we are taking legal routes. When I say legal, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be hiring a lawyer, because it's on principle partly. Neighbour dumps fill on one's land.
Yeah.
And everyone around us said, you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer. I'm thinking, you are paying a lawyer. I'd rather pay locals.
Yeah.
So we are paying locals. In a minute, I'll explain why. We're trying to be creative about this problem. We have a problem. So how do we look at it creatively?
Yeah.
And now we are taking the legal route in terms of strategy and so on. So rather than paying a lawyer, we're paying locals to come and move fill. So if you want work for $25 an hour, make contact. We have quite a lot of fill to move.
Now, people can contact you via email, yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Google my name.
So what we'll do is we will throw up an email. We'll throw up the email there. Yes, Producer Andrew is nodding his head. I've got the thumbs up. Cool, we will do that in the edit. That's not a problem at all. Now, I have a question for you. As you said, you're away in Netherlands.
Yes.
And then all of these things happen.
The worst bit of the fill actually happened to happen in 4 days. We went to Christchurch for a whānau event. So actually we were in the country when the worst amount of fill was dumped on our land. But we went back to the Netherlands. I have 2 growing kids and 5 mokopuna who live in Holland. So we went over there, and COVID stopped us travelling.
Yes.
So it was a catch-up.
Yep. So with all of these not insignificant events that have happened, how has that, with the exclusion of this, I by the way, I think this is beautiful. If you were to say to me this is completed, I would believe you. I think it's lovely. How do you think that has shaped your current art output?
Practice. Right.
Practice.
Good question.
Thank you.
Very good question.
That's what I'm here for.
No. Excellent. Because that's actually interesting. Like, art works on many levels, and often a lot of my art is more conceptual, like the possum. It's about whether one belongs. Oh, you want to hold him? You can cuddle him. It's very cute.
Yeah, we could. Okay, I'm actually gonna hold this up. Can we see this in the? I need to drop it down. Yep. There we go. It's fully in the shot.
So it's not. I did not stuff it. That's stuffed by Clay Tukutonga, and she lives near Kyle or near Otangiroa, and she's gifted it to me after I was very complimentary about it. And then the eggshell helmet with the kiwi on it makes its own statement.
Yes, it does.
And then this is for an exhibition on predators. And a predator is a loaded word, you know.
Oh, yes, it is.
So it's a hard one, because in a way, humans are predators.
Does that make him the, oh my God, the New Zealand's King Julian from Madagascar? And does he like to move it?
So there's a little framed work. Maybe
Yeah.
I should read it, because it's in Māori and English, and I can do the Māori, if you like, unless you prefer. So...
I'll tell you what, you've given us a performance already.
Out of
Stare
place.
straight down that camera and give it a read. You will need the microphone, though.
Okay.
Just drag it with you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful, eh? Give it a turn. Give it a little bit of a turn so it's pointing towards you. There
like
you go.
this?
Yeah, perfect.
Cute. Huatau. Beauty is a light within the heart. He marama a atua o te ngakau. Clever. Murimuri. I have breathed within you a breath of my own spirit. Kua whakahangia koe e au, ki te hā o toku wairua. independent. Momo tu ha. Momo rā waho. Where is the balance? Kei hea te tūrete. Soft, strokeable, pāmiri, haumiri. What are the consequences of our mistakes? He aha ngā hua o tau he. Beautiful. Who mārere. Who sees? Ma wai rā a rete. Eyes, kanohi. Who puts it right? Ma wai rā e whakatika. Nose, ihu. Some beings cannot be left to harm others. Ko etahi mamoe e kore e taewa te noho. Kia ta putu tapu, ai e tahi atu. And then the name of the piece, Out of Place, Rā Waho.
Wow. Wow. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's not often. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 other guests in the space of over a year actually do some performance on here. So thank you very much. That is beautiful.
Well, I must credit Toro Pohatu. She's my old Māori studies teacher with with creating the translation. My Māori's good enough to have a conversation and to talk, and then what we do is we kōrero back and forth, but she comes up with the beautiful phrases.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And so I must credit her, Toro Pohatu, who now lives in Otepoti, Dunedin. And she's still a very good friend, and I often work with her on projects. This is also in a book that Pete Newland has published.
We've had Pete on.
Yes.
Pete's been
so
on.
It's in one of his Fast Fibres book. And what I try to do now whenever I have something published in his is to have it bilingual, because that's my thing. I want to try and be as, if I can, when I make creative projects, to have them bilingual. And I then work with a native speaker or a very fluent speaker to get those nuances, because it's not a direct translation either. It's a play of 2 worlds, of 2 languages.
Yeah.
Because Rā Waho, it's the word, it means outside.
Yes.
Which out of place is quite a good reference for that.
Yep.
But it's also the word for predator or someone without a whakapapa to the place they're in.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's
like it's a word with many different meanings.
Well, most words have that.
Yeah, they
Even
do.
in English, we have many meanings as well. It's just that sometimes, if you only speak one language, you're often not aware of all those resonances.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start dipping into another language world, then all those things come back, and then they feed each other. And we're probably not so aware of it, but a lot of Māori concepts and ideas are infiltrated into New Zealand English as well.
Oh, definitely.
I think if anyone travels, they see that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
Well, we're very lucky.
Yep.
No, the egg came. No,
the egg came off.
I'm just going to lay him down.
Gonna lay him down.
Oh, lay him
Fine.
down. Lay me down.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
But I feel very lucky. When I first left Aotearoa in '89 to go to the Netherlands, one of my Māori friends at the time, he was very concerned, and he said, you know, you're not leaving because you're a Pākehā. And I said, no. And I mean, for me, Māori cultural worlds are magnificent. I feel very connected, and I feel as a New Zealander, it must be Māori and other things.
Yep.
So for me, so perhaps I should read out the whakatauki, which is on the painting.
Sure.
And it sort of relates to what we're talking
We're
about.
going to get the books out of the way?
Well, I don't need it because I can read it.
Okay.
So I started the painting about the birds I was missing.
Yes.
And it was a way of, kind of expressing that. And so then I asked 5 of my native speaker friends of Māori, how would they say the sound? Because birds...
It's the voice that they have, right?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
In every language,
Yeah.
you articulate sounds differently. So we have tiok, at the top, and that's how one of my friends, a lovely man from Moirera, who that's how he would express that sound as a native speaker.
For which particular bird?
Oh, this is the kōtare, the kingfisher.
The kingfisher. Cool. Excellent.
And beep beep. How do I say that in English? Beep beep. I'm not really sure. I was only focusing on Māori, so I wasn't kind of thinking about an English translation.
That's okay. So, what if you say the words? We'll associate with what bird, and we'll kind of we'll start
at
from
the
top and work our way down.
Okay, tio.
Okay, that is the kingfisher.
Kōtare, right?
Yes.
Kue. Ku.
Kiwi.
Ku. No, ku. I've missed out the kiwi. Kiwi.
We missed out the kiwi. Okay, so we've got the owl.
Aye, yes. And maybe I should say the saying, e koi koi te tui.
Yep.
And we have the tui down the bottom.
Yes.
E kete kete te kaka. There's a kaka here.
Yep.
Te kuku, e kuku te kereru. Now, it's a saying. I'll translate it literally, and then I'll say what it means, because it's very relevant to what we're discussing.
Definitely.
So the tui chirps. I'm just doing rough, The kaka cackles, and the kereru coos. Coo.
The kereru being
the wood pigeon.
Wood pigeon. Right.
Sorry,
That's
in the
right.
middle, the one with all the chalk lines on it, which I'm going to make skinnier because he's a wee bit too chubby.
The one that's eaten all the bread.
Or the berries that used to be on the tree that used to be until the neighbour knocked it down.
Yeah.
The saying is more or less saying it takes all sorts.
Right.
All these birds speak differently.
Yeah.
So in a way, what it means is that in any place, society is better if we have all different ways of expressing ourselves. And so these birds express themselves differently. And that's sort of the meaning of the
they all
whakatoki.
live together harmoniously as one.
Or they express themselves.
Yeah.
And so the name of the piece is called Ka Kōrero Māori Ngā Manu. Birds speak every day.
Yeah.
So in Māori also means everyday or ordinary.
Yes.
So it's a pun on that. And when you think of it, birds speak as they are. I mean, language is something of humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, enough of that. You asked me the question about the effect on my art practice, having all this fill dumped on our place. Well, I'm working on a new video called The Dumping, 3 minutes long. Wonderful piece of music. I have it by a friend, Nigel Gavin. So I have an original piece of music to go with it. And basically it is a dumping of information. So one of the things that's been hard for us is the council do send us material.
Yep.
But lots of it. And of course, they're trying to bury us. And so on. And also just psychologically, when you have something coming at you that's kind of new territory, which is for us. We're not contractors. We're not, we don't work with these big machines. We're doing everything by hand. He probably thinks we're ridiculous because we're doing everything, we're bucket by bucket, we're removing the fill, hand by hand. I shoveled, yesterday we did about 40 buckets. So, I mean, we are with helpers, but bucket by bucket. What I'm doing is I'm digging big holes in our property, putting all the good dirt around the trees and filling the fill and then putting steps on top of it.
Okay. Yeah,
so we're trying to be creative about, and so we've got all these up and down things, which we would never do normally because it's so labour intensive, but the neighbour will be paying for it.
Yeah, nice.
And he will be.
Okay.
And the other thing is to think how art can be relevant today. I mean, in some ways, this is a mini climate crisis, or a mini, because we have flooding. Every time it rains, we have about 7 rivers coming under because he just dumped the fill there, no drainage.
Right.
So it just floods. And I know this is nothing on the scale of people around the Hawke's Bay area who are suffering deeply.
Yep.
But for us, it's a kind of wake-up call, like, okay, we must do something to change things here. So the art practice is kind of mixing with the political, in a sense.
And environmental.
And for me, environmental is political. But I'm not talking about party politics. I'm talking about engaging with the society that you're in and trying to make a change.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing. And I'm selling the film. I sell it for $1 a kilo as art.
Yeah.
And I sold one on the weekend.
Yes.
And then I have recently been in an exhibition curated by Ali Smith and Chris Schroeder at the Shutter Room.
Wow.
And what I did there is I took a Remu trunk.
Yes.
We are scavengers. If we hear of anybody throwing out trees or we will take them and look after them and do something with it. So we have a lot of junk lying around our place.
Yeah.
We have a lot of room for it, thankfully. So I took a Remu trunk, positioned it in the middle of the gallery, and then I dumped 40 kilo, which was 0.01% of the fill dumped by the neighbour on our land.
Wow.
And then it was all on the floor of the gallery.
Yeah.
And there will be a photo later and people can see what that looked like.
Oh, that'll look amazing.
And then I had the hand of my eldest grandchild coming out at the top.
Yeah.
Okay, enough, huh?
There's a lot, and I feel like we've only really scratched the surface.
Oh, and there are books. This is on feminism. This is called Feminist Activisms in the library. If you Google Feminist Art Activisms, published in London. So I write stuff as well, art reviews and things. So there's a little essay in there. And I call my essay Feminism, Fuzzy-Edged Feminism. Because one of the problems when people take a stance, like I call myself a feminist, is taking a stance. But also one of the negative things about doing that is when you do that, it can set up a polarization with someone who might not feel comfortable with that label.
Yeah.
And so, and I also feel my approach to feminism is fuzzy-edged. I do this and I do that. A couple of these stories have indicated I have a problem, then I go and do that. And so it's in a way it's kind of chipping away. I'll finish with a performance piece that I did in Cyprus. Oh no, too much.
So you are going to talk a little bit about a performance piece, or are you going to do a little bit of the performance?
No, I'll just discuss it because I forgot to bring my herd of elephants and they're necessary for the performance. So in 2009, I was invited to do a performance.
Sorry, just before you start.
Herd of elephants, yes.
Now, is it a literal herd of elephants? Or is it like metaphorical? Or are they like little clay or ceramic elephants? Because honestly, having that shit come thundering down the driveway like a bad Jumanji would be terrifying.
No, I left them at home.
Okay, cool.
They're origami elephants,
right,
made out of newspaper.
There you go. Very cool.
Safe.
Yeah.
Little things. Very cute.
Excellent. Okay.
So it was a German artist. She invited about 30 artists from all over Europe to come, and she had lived on Cyprus. Cyprus is divided into two. We have Northern Cyprus, Southern Cyprus, and...
Is this when you were living in the Netherlands?
I was still living in the Netherlands, right. 2009.
Okay. Right, okay, cool.
Okay.
Just want to set that up for the...
Yeah, sure, for the listener, because we moved back to Aotearoa in 2015.
Okay, yep.
Sort of 17, because I didn't quite make... I was here for a few months and I went back. It took me 2 years to make the transition.
Took you a couple of goes.
Well, the husband moved earlier. He was keen, but I took my time.
Yep. Fair enough.
We have a good marriage. It's lucky.
Hey, if it works, it works.
It works. Well, I think so. No, he's
on our next session of North Artist
a
Conversation, we have the husband. No, I'm kidding.
You could grab him. He's a poet.
Oh! Okay, sorry, you carry on.
Right,
We're throwing humour out there now.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah. No, he's a feminist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, back to
Cyprus.
Okay, we'll do that. So I arrived. The theme was Ganesha, which is an elephant form.
Okay.
For peace, and she chose that. So we had to do something of elephants. So that was my kind of remit, something of elephants. So in the end, I brought a piece and I called it Greetings from Leiden. Leiden was the city I was living in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And all the newspapers that I took with me, because I made the elephants on the spot. It was kind of important to me to do it there. Because I wanted people to see what I was doing. I was from newspaper, came at the herd.
Yeah.
And sometimes people helped me. So we have Northern Cyprus where they speak Turkish,
mm-hmm.
and they have the lira, and on the southern part, they speak Greek, and they have the euro. And Nicosia is the capital, and Nicosia is divided in half with a wall.
Wow.
And 2 weeks before I arrived, someone had actually been shot. So it's dangerous. Yeah, from one side to the other.
Wow.
A soldier had shot another soldier. It's volatile. I don't know about... No, today I think it's still just as bad. So in 1972, there was a sort of standoff between Turkey and Greece. So Greece is a big country next door, Turkey, and they don't really like each other very much.
I don't think they have over the millennia.
It's a sad story. I've been in both countries. It's a sad story. And so Cyprus has become the place where they fight and try to exert... control in some manner. Now, I was very lucky. The day I arrived, I'm a Baha'i, it's a religion. I won't go on about it. People can Google it. The day I arrived, I was met by a Baha'i on the other side of the border. So I had this adventure, like, man, this is amazing. I mean, it's amazing because I don't live there. I don't have to live every day with this tension and so on. But I was very privileged that I came off the bus. I had to arrive on the Greek side because the Greek side will not allow people from the north through the border if you arrive at the wrong airport. Anyway, we'll carry on. So I had to arrive. I know, this is serious. It's there. So I arrived, but I was allowed to go from the Greek side to the Turkish side and back again because I have to have my passport stamped to show that I'd come from the Greek side first and then come back again. So I had all of that in the morning, and then what the Baha'is had decided to do, because they wanted to bring all of Cyprus as a community, they tended to have all their meetings on the north side because the northern Cypriots had problems getting through that border. But
so it's easier going one way as opposed to the other.
Exactly.
Right.
So for the Greek side, easier. Yep. So they tended to have their events on that side. Okay. And so I was at this thing, and lots of nice food, great food, and I met quite a few artists of all sorts. Mm-hmm. The next day I had a meeting with the artist on the Greek side because she was positioned there. And she said, we really don't have anyone from North Cyprus involved in the project. I said, how many do you want? I met a whole heap of them yesterday. Yeah. She said, really? I said, yes. I mean, they can't come across the border, but we could carry their art across. So that's what we did.
Of course. Yes.
And we made some of the art on the border. Okay, so I'm setting up what it's like there. It's pretty hard for the northern Cypriots, particularly. Yeah. And ironically, when I went on the northern side, when I come back, I had to have another piece of paper to be stamped because the Greek side would not accept it. And so I had all these bits of paper of all these visa stamps on it. That we are talking about walking 100 metres.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the 100 metres, this is the main street of the city. That's a no-go zone, so it's run by the UN. It's called the Green Zone. They've got big lines and all the wire and the posts and people with guns and things.
Wow!
It's very heavy. It's pretty. I was not afraid, but that's because I'm a Westerner and I know I'm just visiting.
But that's still quite intense.
It's very intense, and going through the pass, going through this border is serious stuff. So my artwork was. I wanted to make a fuzzy edge. I wanted to erase this border.
Right, yeah.
So the goal I had was how many of my elephant herd can I get into the no-go zone before I was turned back? Because you're not allowed to bring anything in. You go walk down a narrow way. Yeah. You're not allowed to take photos. It's all quite strict. So I started on the Greek side, and I put my elephant one by one on the road. I will supply a photo. One by one, got to the big green line. I'm looking at the guards. They got their guns and things. Mm-hmm. And I put one, and I make sure I've got nothing on me that could conceal a weapon or anything. Right, so I had a camera around my neck. So I was constantly taking photos, but just doing it, without them subtly. But I was this mad woman with this herd of origami elephants. What is she doing? Why? How? So I put one over I had to stop. So I got just the front feet over, the first time round. So then I got up my shopping bag, which was all empty. Okay, I wanted to show I was not a threat. And I put one by one the elephants back. So I had about 40 of them. And then I picked up the bag, presented my passport, and went through to the Turkish side, to the, I shouldn't call it the Turkish, the Northern Cypriot side. And I did the same again. Again, came back until, now they're a bit more freer there. They didn't, I think I could got a few over the border. And then they said, oh no, you should stop now.
Yeah.
And so I stopped and did the same again. Walked through the border, trial 2 on the Greek side. And this time I got a whole elephant over.
Wow.
And then I carried on. And during that whole day of about 8 hours, I think I did this, let's say 30 times. After about the 10th crossing with my elephants, I was gradually getting more and more elephants into the no-go zone. But what happened was it broke the tension. People started laughing. I could hear that I don't understand Greek, but I could see their gestures. Everyone was asking, what's she doing? What's she doing?
Yeah.
And the guards were laughing and joking about this crazy artist with his origami elephants. And we don't know what she's doing. And then people would ask me, what am I doing? I said, I'm taking them for a walk. I'm just taking them for a walk. That's it.
Yeah.
And just giving space. And I think also that's art. I mean, okay, we've got that whole backstory and, it relates to the political situation of the time. But I was thinking, how can I make an artwork that somehow does something with this border, but with humour? I was very light-hearted. Of course, added to the story is I smuggled some art across. And also...
It's all coming out now, guys.
We took it back later. And
Smuggler.
I also got 5 artists illegally into the Greek side because they were part of this show.
Yeah.
And what happened is by this time, nobody cared about the mad woman with her elephants. And I was on the northern side, and this art tutor and her 3 students said, we can't see the rest of the show because it was spread across the border and then on the northern and the south.
Yep.
And I said, come with me. I said, they're not even looking at my passport now because, I'm this mad woman. I said, you hold that elephant, you hold that one, you hold that one. Okay, come with me, give me your passport. I put their passports inside mine because by now all I was doing is holding it in the air because they didn't even want to look.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and then I gave each of them €1 because they had no money.
Yeah.
And I said, come back in 1 hour, I'll take you back.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And I said, and keep it secret because we don't want you stranded here.
Yeah.
And we don't want any trouble. And then after they got back, I then told the organisation what I'd done, and they were so happy because the whole project was about trying to bridge the 2 sides of Cyprus and using art as a catalyst.
And humour.
And humour. But it was,
crazy ass white woman doing shit with folded paper. They'd be like, what the fuck are we looking at?
Well, they were asking me, they did. They asked me, like some of them said, is it political? I said, well, is a newspaper political?
Yes.
Could be.
Depends on what the newspaper is. If it's the weather section, probably not. If it's the politics section, probably yes.
So what I did is I was very specific about the type of newspaper I used.
Okay.
And it was a suburban newspaper. So a suburban would be the swimming competition, the Rose Show.
Yeah. Here's how these students did.
And there was a reason for it. And that is, in places where we do not have violence and conflict, the news is the Rose Show or the swimming competition.
Yeah.
And when we have that as our news, we're pretty good in a very safe space. And so that was the point of them carrying the message of a society where it's the swimming and the rose competition. It's not about life or death or whatever. Yeah.
What an amazing story. What a hell of a life.
It's not over.
No.
So the fill, I hope you hear about, these things we'll be doing with the fill.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, for those people that are interested in purchasing the fill, is this fill that will have been personally poured by yourself?
Yes.
Right. I think that's important.
Personally poured into upcycled paper bags.
Excellent. And if there can be a signature and a date as a certificate of authenticity?
No, there's a certificate of authenticity.
Brilliant. Sonia, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us. This has been an absolute blast. I had no idea where we were going to go, and we've ended up with the coolest stories ever. So thank you so much for sitting down with us. I really appreciate it.
Yep, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as we did filming it. It was so crazy. We were sitting here, and Sonia loves to talk, and she just takes you on these wonderful journeys. I think it's probably fair to say her story about her time in Cyprus is amazing. It's the nuts. It's just such a cool story with the little paper elephants. Just amazing. What an interesting life she's led in general. And we were sort of chatting at the end when we were off camera as well, and she drives around a lot, and she has a van that just goes everywhere with her, and man, just what a woman that is. Just her attitude is just I'm gonna get shit done, and it's just so cool, amazing. Sonia, thank you so much for coming on, man. Really do appreciate it. This was an absolute blast, and I do speak on behalf of myself and Andrew, so thank you. I'm going to, hang on, I haven't done this in a while. I'm going to flick to my camera. Wow. Where the podcast for me was interesting. There was a lot to take in. Normally, I've got my notes and I'm kind of reading through everything, trying to work out where the conversation will go, following along, being an attentive listener, as a good interviewer should. And today I really got lost in what she was saying, because it was, she conjures up some amazing imagery. The statue or sculpture that she built in the Netherlands, 2 meters by 2 meters. Very cool. Wow. Yeah, what an amazing life. So where can you, the listener or viewer, find more of the quality content that we do? Well, I'm going to rattle off everything for you now. For visuals, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all Northland Artists Conversation. For audio, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Again, Northland Artists Conversation. Nice and easy. And if you're an artist, or you know someone who is an artist and you think would be really, really cool sitting down and just shooting the shit and talking with me, please feel free to email us. The email address is hello@northlandartistconversation.co.nz. We'll keep it nice and simple. That way everyone can kind of, just Google Northland Artist Conversation. You'll find us. Now, we also have a Patreon page as well. Patreon is an opportunity for people to donate, give a little bit more, support the podcast. We really do appreciate it. We've got 2 different tiers. Excuse me. Bloody little tickle in my throat. It's that time of year for colds. I'm going to have a drink of water. One moment, please. Just bear with me. What's funny is this podcast, I probably did the least amount of talking. So for Patreon, where can you find us? Well, there's 2 ways you can find us. You can go to Google and type in Patreon. That's Patreon, and then you'll have found us that way. So go to the top right-hand corner, search Northland Artist Conversation, create an account, log in, pick a tier, and go from there. Second way you can find us is nice and easy. Go to www.patreon.com/Northland Artists Conversation. Nice and simple. So we have 2 tiers there. We have the first tier, which is, we affectionately call it a cup of coffee. It's $5 a month. It's just a nice way of saying, hey, look, we really appreciate what you do. Second tier we have is what we've called Coffee Addict, and that's $20 a month, but you do get a few extras with that, which I think is quite cool. You get told who the guests are going to be before anyone else. If you have a question you'd like me to ask the guest, you can send that through. And we'll also give you a shout out as well. So I'm going to shout out our 3 Patreon donors. Thank you very much. Lauren Roach. Thank you so kindly. Amazing. The OG, our very first Patreon supporter. I still appreciate it to this day. Second one, Michael Boter. Mate, thank you so much. Absolute legend. We'll get you back on very soon. And third one is Maggie Coco. Maggie is a beautiful breath of fresh air and such an amazingly talented musician. So thank you to the three of you guys for continuing to support us. We really do appreciate it. It genuinely means a lot to us. I'm going to flick to my wide camera now. So there we go. Wow, we're in August. Thank the maker. We're starting to come out of this horrible, horrible winter wetness. These blisteringly cold nights. Beautiful days, but blisteringly cold nights. This rain and these shitty cyclones that keep turning up. I think I can speak on behalf of majority of Northlanders when we say we're over it. But anyway, enough of that. Let's not get too political. My name is Mark Kelly. On behalf of producer Andrew, editor Rocky, and communications Marino, thank you so much for tuning into the Northland Artist Conversation. We will see you guys real soon.